Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, a recent Spotify survey found that over 70% of 18 to 34-year-olds are now listening to audiobooks, and now they will be adding audiobooks to their platform. The head of cultural partnerships at Spotify will share more. After that, thanks to new research, the millions of people who suffered from long COVID finally have scientific proof that their condition is real. The director of Rehabilitation Innovation at Mount Sinai Health System gives us more information later on. Then, the Independent Care System's Honor Roll Comprehensive Wheelchair Program has introduced private pay wheelchair repairs. We speak with the founder of Honor Roll Program for ICS to learn more. And finally, Pay or Die is a film that follows families struggling to afford insulin and reveal the harrowing reality of living with a chronic illness in the richest country in the world. The director and producer of Pay or Die gives us an insight look to the film. So stay tuned. All this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Alleyne, and today is Tuesday, November 14th. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Popular music app Spotify announced that it will soon offer audiobooks alongside its music library. According to a recent survey, over 70% of 18 to 34-year-olds have shown an interest in audiobooks. I am joined by Xavier Jernigan, the voice of Spotify's AI DJ and head of cultural partnerships, to discuss this trend and the exciting news about audiobooks joining Spotify's platform. Xavier, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you again, for joining us. Now, I want to jump
Of
right
course.
into it. When did Spotify realize listeners wanted to consume several forms of media, including audiobooks on the app?
Well, we conducted a survey of over 1,000 Americans, and we discovered that people are turning to audiobooks for comfort listening. We found that 63% are turning to audiobooks for relaxation, 51% are turning to it for comfort. Plus, we found that 41% of audiobook listeners prefer audiobooks because of the cognitive benefits, like improving your memory and keeping your mind active. And you mentioned this before in the intro, Gen Z and millennials are leading the way. Over 72% of 18 to 30 of 34-year-olds listen to audiobooks. So all this data alongside having a library of 5 million podcasts, having 100 million songs on our platform, we're in the audio business. So it was just a natural progression to go into audiobooks.
Now, as you mentioned, audiobooks have become increasingly popular amongst users today. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that study? Because I thought it was very interesting that younger generations, wanted to listen to audiobooks as well. So can you just expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, the thing with audiobooks is you can lean into the multitask hours of the day to take in your favorite book. And we found that people like to do it while they're traveling, that people like to do it while they're doing other things like winding down in your night routine before you go to bed at night. 21% of our respondents listen to audiobooks as a part of their morning routine. People love taking their favorite authors for a stroll, taking a walk while listening to your favorite audiobook, or working out or cooking. Thanksgiving is coming up. I know I'm going to be listening to my audiobooks while I travel down to Florida to pick up my mom and then take her to Alabama. So I'm going to listen to an audiobook that she bought me as a physical book, Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. She bought me that for Christmas last year, Kevin. I still haven't sat down with the physical book, but now I can listen to it while I pick her up, while we're on the plane, and while we're around extended family, and while they have me cleaning the kitchen after Thanksgiving dinner.
And I think that's like the really cool thing about audiobooks is that I know for a long time people were a little bit apprehensive about like, electronics being in the world of reading. But there's so many
Right.
benefits. And you kind of mentioned a few of them. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the benefits of listening to audiobooks?
Yeah, I think part of it is that you can experience the same words that the author, the creator of these worlds, or the people who are telling their own stories, whether it's a biography, whether it's a fictional story. You can experience this world in a different way, whether they're narrating it themselves or it's your favorite celebrity, your favorite actor narrating it. But then they have different sound design and soundscapes around what you're listening to. So it's a different way to experience those same words that the author wrote. And it's a different way that that author gets to express their vision. And I think that's a really cool way to take that in.
I can agree, and I think it also adds another layer to the experience because, again, reading is all about kind of being imaginative, and I think that audiobooks can
That's
only
right.
add to that. So I think that's pretty awesome. Now, this is a feature exclusive to Spotify Premium users. How will the addition of this feature enhance your experience on that?
Well, the beautiful thing is you're getting more for what you already have. So if you already have a premium account, we now, for any eligible US premium account holder, primary account holder, that means if you have a dual plan and you're the primary account holder, if you have a family plan and you're the primary account holder, you get to listen to 15 audio hours, excuse me, of audiobooks per month out of our catalog of 200,000 audiobooks that includes 70% of the best selling titles that are out there. So you have that alongside your podcast, our library of over 5 million podcasts, our library of over 100 million songs. And you can find me, your AI DJ, right there on the music side. And you can have all that living side by side. We're the only platform in the world that has audiobooks, podcasts, and music all side by side. And that's just a beautiful benefit. And you don't have to do anything extra. All you have to do if you're a premium account holder is press play.
That's amazing. Now, what types of authors or books will they have access to? I think this is a really cool feature. I know that you kind of mentioned some of the books that you're interested in. So, what are some of the titles that listeners will have access to?
Jasmine Jasmine Ward's Let Us Descend has been on everybody's book club list. That's one. Britney Spears recently released her memoir, The Woman in Me. A lot of people follow Britney on social media. They wanted to know what's going on with Britney or what was going on with Britney. And now she's telling her own story in her own words, narrated by an amazing narrator. And now you get to submerge yourself into that world. We also have everything from Shakespeare to Star Wars, and I'm a Star Wars nerd. And I get to delve into all the different books, all the different episodes. So it's something for everybody.
Now, I want to know, what is your experience kind of being a part of this? You're the voice of Spotify's AI DJ, and I think it's really cool that how we're seeing technology enhance, how we listen to music, how we read books. Can you just talk about your experience just being a part of that?
Absolutely. For me, it's about storytelling and it's about authentic and sincere connection. And that's what audiobooks ushers in. There's a connection between the author and the person that's listening. There's that connection that's formed when the story is told right in your ear. AI DJ works the same way. Me, through AI technology, through AI synthetic voice, and through our recommendations, I'm telling stories about the songs that you're listening to. I'm telling you why we're recommending the music that you're getting. I'm telling you a little bit about the artist. What were they thinking about when they were making that song? It's the same way with audiobooks. It all boils down to storytelling and to authentic connection. And that's what the voice aspect does for you. And just the the concept of storytelling is just something that's been a part of history for years. We're just bringing it back into the forefront through all different versions of audio, whether it's podcasting, music, AI DJ, and now audiobooks.
And as you mentioned, it's been around for so long. I love that we're finding new ways to kind of be innovative in how we tell these stories. I think it's just amazing that Spotify is like really being a part of this. Now, where can people go for more information? Maybe they're not a premium user yet. What can they do to make sure that they have access to these really cool books and these titles?
Yeah, if you're not a Spotify user yet, if you're not a premium account holder, if you have Spotify free, just go ahead and upgrade to premium. If you don't have Spotify at all, just go to the App Store on iOS, Apple, or Android, download Spotify, subscribe to premium, and then right there on the home page, right at the top across our home recommendations, just choose audiobooks and then choose your favorite audiobook. Or you can go to search and then you can scroll down to the audiobooks hub and then choose from any of 200,000 audiobooks and tap in at that 15 hours per month that you get. That's about two audiobooks per month.
Well, Xavier, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Don't go away. We'll be back with more open right after this.
I'll see y'all.
After a basketball game, a black teenage boy, Brandon, reads his texts in his family group chat. Auntie Flo, congrats on the big win. Mom, that's my baby. Brandon replies, thanks y'all. In a park, his sister Maya texts, where are we celebrating? Dad replies, home. Mom texts, I got dinner going. Auntie Flo replies, ooh, I can't wait, then receives a FEMA flood watch text alert. She texts the family, anyone see that weather alert? We need a plan to stay safe, especially after last year. Ready has a list of resources at ready.gov/plan. In his workshop, Dad sends a photo of emergency supplies and texts, looks like we need flashlights and batteries. Leaving a store with a shopping bag, Brandon replies, I got us covered. Mom texts, I'll check in with Grandma and Papa. Maya texts, thanks Auntie, feeling good about this plan. In her
Got some batteries
Auntie Flo
and
replies, love
two
y'all,
flashlights.
we gotta stay safe. Later, the family
feel like you get
sits
taller
and
every
eats
time I
supplies at
see
home. Stay connected. Plan for natural disasters. Ready.gov/plan.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgia?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed?
Get off my food.
Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug. You know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for ya. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
Welcome back. Nearly 4 years after the COVID-19 pandemic, an article and study published on nature.com shows there may be more to the condition known as long COVID. Researcher and director of rehabilitation innovation at Mount Sinai Health System, Dr. David Putrino, joins me to discuss the study and what new research reveals about this condition. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, can you just explain for those who may not know what it is? What is long COVID?
So long COVID is what we call an infection-associated complex chronic illness. It affects around 7% of Americans today, and that number continues to increase. The CDC describes long COVID as any condition where about 3 months after your acute COVID infection, you're still experiencing symptoms related to that infection. So it can look very different in different people, but it is affecting millions of Americans right at this moment.
And can you just explain, what are those symptoms?
So some of the most comprehensive articles that look into long COVID symptoms have identified over 200 different symptoms that can affect every organ system in the body. Some of the most common symptoms are extreme fatigue, so people being unable to get themselves up from a laid down position or get themselves out of bed. Cognitive impairment, so things such as forgetting how to get to your house from being down the street, or not being able to make decisions, or things of that nature. Then we also have things like post-exertional malaise, which is an inability to be able to exert yourself without experiencing severe symptoms afterwards, and gastrointestinal issues, skin issues, you name it. If you can think of an organ system, we see issues affected by long COVID.
Now, can you talk a little bit more about the study that you participated in that examined the blood samples of individuals with long COVID?
Yeah, so recently we completed a study where we looked for biological differences between people who had a diagnosis of long COVID, individuals who had had COVID and fully recovered from their acute infection, and individuals who had never had COVID. And what we were able to show was that there were very clear differences in blood biomarkers that we were studying between those three groups that allowed us to identify people with long COVID with 96% accuracy compared to the two control groups that did not have long COVID.
Now, I know it may be like pretty complicated, but what were the differences that you found? And could these? I know it's in blood, but could these differences also be seen in other ways? Maybe just in symptoms, or how quickly they bounce back, stuff like that.
So certainly, we encourage all clinicians right at this moment to diagnose long COVID based on symptoms. If a patient comes to you with symptoms related to an acute COVID infection, believe them. Make the diagnosis, because right now that's the best tool we have, is listening to our patients. But in terms of the blood differences that we found, it is complicated. There were many different things that we saw, but I can boil it down to three big things that we saw. The first was that we saw evidence of what we call viral persistence, meaning that there was strong evidence that in folks with long COVID, the virus is still in the body. The body is still producing antibodies against the virus. The body is still responding as though the virus is present. The next thing we saw were hormonal differences. We saw extremely low levels of a hormone called cortisol, which is actually the hormone that wakes you up in the morning. When you wake up and your cortisol starts to spike, that's the thing that actually makes you able to get out of bed and get on with your day. In folks with long COVID, morning cortisol was extremely low, meaning that this hormone that ordinarily gets us ready for the day isn't working the way that it should be in their bodies. And the final thing we saw was evidence of what we call immune exhaustion. So their immune system, the folks with long COVID, their immune system was so exhausted from fighting something for a very long time that now other viruses that were within their bodies, such as Epstein-Barr virus or herpes virus, was reactivating. So if we take all of this together, what we see as different from folks with long COVID is their body has been fighting something for a long time, probably the SARS-CoV-2 virus. It's starting to get tired. So we're seeing hormone depletion, we're seeing immune depletion, and that leads to all sorts of other symptoms and reactivations and problems that are happening downstream.
Now, I understand that you describe long COVID as biological. Now, what does this mean? And, what are some of the long-term effects this will have on patients?
So it was important that we labeled long COVID as a biological illness, because for many years, even before COVID, there have been infection-associated complex chronic illnesses like chronic Lyme disease or myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is sometimes called chronic fatigue syndrome. And for the longest time, people with these conditions have been dismissed as having a psychological illness. So it was very important that when we published this paper showing very clear differences in blood biomarkers that allowed us to predict with 96% accuracy who had long COVID and who did not, that we called that out as biological, so that we don't continue along with this narrative of people who have these infection-associated illnesses, which are often sometimes viewed as invisible illnesses because physically folks will look okay, but their bodies can't work. We need to make sure that these folks are being, called, the conditions are being called what they are, which is biological, not psychological.
Now, how could this affect patients who are currently facing maybe other illnesses?
So individuals with long COVID come from all walks of life. So, we really actually haven't seen any specific vulnerabilities to going on to develop long COVID. I have people who, prior to their COVID infection, used to run marathons, used to do every sort of endurance sport you could think of, high-performing individuals. And I have individuals who were quite unwell before they got COVID, and they went on to develop long COVID as well. It really does seem to affect individuals indiscriminately. So what that tells us is we all need to be aware of this. We all need to be taking precautions to avoid developing long COVID.
So I guess my next question now is, what causes someone to experience long COVID? Is it something maybe people, I know you mentioned that there are people who are healthy who experience this, but are there any factors or any markers that someone could look for to know if like they may experience long COVID at some point?
At present, no. At present, I wish I could say, there are folks in our community who are safer than others, but right now, what we need to focus on is infection prevention. We need to focus on clean air. We need to focus on mask wearing. We need to focus on making sure that if someone goes to a hospital, they feel safe, because we've taken a lot of infection prevention measures to make sure that they don't go on to get SARS-CoV-2 infection. So that would be the biggest thing that we can do right now to prevent long COVID in our communities, is prevent getting infected in the first place.
Now, I know we're still kind of like new in the research realm of like studying long COVID, but if this is a biological illness, could this in some way be passed down through genetics? Let's say someone is pregnant and they have long COVID. Is it possible that they could pass it on to their child, or is there any research to determine whether that is possible or not?
It's a really great question. It's very unclear right now as to whether long COVID is something that can be passed down. I will say that the NHS in the UK, which is the National Health Service in the UK, has now made people with a diagnosis of long COVID ineligible to donate blood. That's how concerned they are about this problem, because we don't know right now if infection-associated complex chronic illnesses can be passed down. So we do need to be cautious about that.
Now, more research may be needed, but because we're seeing the long-term effect, COVID is having on patients, could there be a cure or treatment to help alleviate some of these symptoms? Or is this something that's possible now that we know people are living with this for prolonged periods of time? Could we possibly see like medicine over the counter, any stuff like that to help these people that are living with long COVID?
So our center at Mount Sinai, which is called the Cohen Center for Recovery from Complex Chronic Illness, or the CORE, focuses a lot on interventions. Now, what we commonly tell our patients is that we focus on treatments, not cures, at this time. And what I mean by that is if a person with long COVID walks through our doors, we can get them quite a bit better with a different sort of cocktail of medicines and rehabilitations and other interventions. But we right now do not have a targeted cure for this illness. We are running lots of different clinical trials right now where we're repurposing drugs that are already on the market to try and see if we can make a difference in the lives of folks with long COVID. But for the time being, what we really focus on is treating the symptoms and seeing if through those treatments we can make people a little more functional and feel a little more like themselves. And that's what we've got for right now.
Now, I know there's so much going on. What could we see in the future of research in regard to long COVID? Because there's so many questions that I'm sure that so many people have, and right now we just don't have that many answers because it is something that's fairly new. So, what could the future of research look like in regard to long COVID?
I think the future of research is bright. We have a lot of really incredible people working this problem right now. And I think from my perspective, what I'm most excited about is the prospect of very sophisticated clinical trials where we try combination therapies to treat individuals with long COVID. I do not think that this is a condition that is going to have a single drug solution. I think that because of how many people are affected so differently by long COVID, we need combination therapies. We need to better understand all of the different ways that long COVID can present in different communities, because it never looks the same way twice. And we need to come up with clever ways of trialing combination drugs to make sure that we treat the problem appropriately.
Now, we are approaching, flu season and COVID season where the risk of getting sick is heightened. Can you just quickly let us know what people should be doing just to stay safe?
So all of the same old things that we've learned in the pandemic. So making sure that you're up to date with your vaccinations, making sure that you are, taking appropriate caution when you're in crowded places. So if you can wear a mask, do wear a mask. If you can set up a HEPA filter or something that's going to clean the air around you, set that up so that you've got clean access to clean air. These are the infection prevention things that we can do. And, I'm always going to advocate for caution around crowds, around indoor gatherings, and making sure that if you're sick, stay at home. Think about your community. Don't struggle through it and get a whole bunch of other people sick, because the reality of the science right now is that every COVID infection is a risk, and we want to make sure that people stay healthy.
Well, Doctor, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. We have more Open for You right after this.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about poor Georgia?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed?
Get off my food.
Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug. You know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for ya. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
We're all just trying to keep things running for those who rely on us.
Ready?
That's why we don't have time to be sick with the flu. And especially this year, no one has time to get sick. Get a flu shot for yourself and those around you too.
Kids!
I don't want to talk about it.
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 Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency.
Kids, you all right?
This family's prepared. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan. Go to nyc.gov/readyny or call 311 for more information.
Welcome back. The Independence Care System, also known as ICS, makes it their top priority to serve people with disabilities by focusing on their health, mobility, and independence. Their latest initiative, Honor Roll, dedicates time to assisting individuals who use wheelchairs. Jean Minkel, founder of the On the Roll program at Independence Care System, joins me today to discuss this program and their efforts to help wheelchair users. Jean, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, can you talk about the On the Roll initiative and basically what that is?
Sure. So On a Roll is actually a comprehensive mobility solutions program. ICS provides service, care coordination for people with physical disabilities, and a large number of our members have a mobility disability. So they're relying on a wheelchair as their primary means of getting around. And when you have the right chair, your ability to negotiate the world is significantly easier. So we actually have both a therapeutic, clinician-run assessment center so that people have physical assessment, functional assessment. We look at their body type and configuration and make recommendations for what we call complex rehab technology. So little different than what you might see at the airport or you might see at the Target with the little scooter. Our recommendations are individually configured to meet both the functional needs of people and the environments that they use. It's what I call the sexy end of our business because it's like the new car experience, but you then need to keep that vehicle, that device operational. And so the other half of our program is a repair program. And we started actually in conjunction with ICS, meeting the needs of our Medicaid population and using the Medicaid benefit to get people the right equipment and then keep it moving. As the need has grown, insurances are increasingly challenging to just the paperwork side of it. You need a doctor's prescription to get a wheelchair repair. So we wanted to offer, we have technicians, we have an infrastructure, we actually have vans in New York City that, if you live in the city and your chair breaks down, is not functional, many people in New York City don't have a private vehicle to then get that chair to a repair shop. So we offer this service now under a private pay program for people who have resources. And I want to underscore there's not a really large market here, and that for better or for worse, a significant number of people with disabilities don't have that access. But for those who do, we wanted to make our technicians and our services available. So it makes it comprehensive in that way.
And something you said that stood out to me was that like when they have the right wheelchair. And I think that was so important because I think for a lot of people who, don't come into contact with wheelchairs don't often think about how the right one really makes a difference. What are some challenges people face, when they have to rely on a wheelchair that isn't right for them?
Oh boy. Well, let's start with just not being comfortable. I always like to refer, if you're a driver of an automobile and somebody else was in your driver's seat and it's like, oh, this isn't very comfortable. Well, if it's not set for your body and where your balance is, then you feel out of sorts. So at a very basic level, just comfort. Further, we have many more medical concerns when someone's a longtime wheelchair rider. So skin protection. Many of our folks don't have sensation, so their skin is at risk for having a pressure injury. So we look to have we call a support surface in that chair that protects the skin. And then many of our folks don't have the muscle power in their trunk to sit up against gravity. So we need to have external supports on the chair. So postural support, skin integrity, and then ultimately, where is it that you want to mobilize? New York City is a really interesting environment. We have little elevators, the infamous, it's just one little step into our building. Well, with a manual chair, someone might be able to pop that little step and be able to get in and out. Power chair, not so much. So environment of use as well as individual fit to the person.
Now, that really makes me want to point out the importance of realizing that, we don't benefit from a one-size-fits-all approach in regard to this. Can you talk about how your organization is really highlighting that and making sure that every individual has a unique experience?
Absolutely. So back to our audience, do you have one pair of shoes? Like one size doesn't fit all in our mobility. So when we meet with a member or a client, there's an interview process. So what is it you've tried in the past? What works for you that you don't want me to mess up? And then what is it that you hope to achieve by having either new seating system or new mobility device? So individual body type starts to contribute to the unique shapes and sizes and physical capabilities. So a manual wheelchair rider, you need the wheel in the right place. My arms are not as long as David's arms were. So I need to be able to move that wheel into the right place. If I'm not able to use a manual chair, well, is a joystick going to meet your need? Where's the joystick located? And then we have advanced technology for people that can't use their hands. So one of our colleagues uses actually a straw and uses breath control. Drive his chair, fully functional, fully employed, drives around all the time using sip and puff. So access is individualized as well as the shape and size of the person and what is it they really want to do. I want to go where I want to go, when I want to go. And that's what we try and individualize.
Now, the program will teach people about wheelchairs and other equipment, which, you talked about so many different types. Can you expand on why, teaching people how to use the equipment was an important effort?
Sure. So we actually have a peer-to-peer wheelchair maintenance program, and it's wheelchair riders teaching wheelchair riders, which is just so cool to watch the learning go on. So a manual wheelchair rider gets a flat tire. What do I do now? Well, peers will say, you should have a little bag always with you. Spare tire, some tire irons, and now there's actually portable little inflation devices. Others, where's the serial number on your chair? If you know the serial number, you can get the parts much more accurately. Power chair users, how are you charging your battery? Are you doing it every night? How long should it last? What's the frequency in which you should be changing your batteries? And then no matter what kind of chair you have, there are nuts and bolts that need to be tightened up. So it's the equivalent of the oil change every 3,000 miles. If you once a month go around, tighten everything up, then you're not going to have that brake that falls off just when you're trying to transfer into a car. So day to day, month to month, and then just general cleanliness, just keeping the chair clean. People may not know that the casters on wheelchairs, they collect hair. So, and the hair becomes a grit, and then the grit gets in the bearing. And then it's not so easy to roll your chair anymore. Right. But if I take it out, and it's remarkable, we talk to people, it's like, oh, I have dog hair, I have cat hair, I have my wife's hair.
Right. Like, there's so many elements that even they probably didn't know. So that's why I think this is such an amazing initiative. What are the requirements to be eligible to be a part of this program?
So accessing honor roll services, just a willingness and interest to access. We have as I say, the private pay program. The clinic is open to anybody with insurance, largely, because usually we're recommending pretty expensive mobility devices. But if someone makes a call to our clinic, we can do the insurance verification. In the insurance world, Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance will accept as many of those who we're in network with. Welcome to the real world. With regard to our repair program, private pay is an option for those who have the resources. And then for our Medicaid recipients, going through their Medicaid company, there is a network of durable medical equipment suppliers out there. So we're not providing service to every Medicaid recipient, but if somebody is interested and wants to join ICS to access this benefit, we do have a health home for people with long-term physical disabilities.
And I understand that you also assist people who may struggle with insurance providers. Can you quickly tell us about that effort as well?
Do you have another hour? But I'm happy to. Really what insurance is looking for is the justification, the written documentation that spells out why each piece of this piece of equipment is needed. So not only do we write up that information, but we then journey with the person. We need the doctor's prescription. We need the quote from the supplier, and we follow it through. And then most importantly, if it isn't denied, which is a frequent enough occurrence, we will actually go through the appeal process with you, as we feel really strongly that we looked at the original qualifications. We gave a description as to why you have a need, and then we will follow through the appeal. So unfortunately, an awful lot of people go, oh, I got a denial and that was the end of it. We will follow up with you all the way through the fair hearing process if we need to. So,
and this is just one of the many things that your organization does. Could you just quickly let people, for
Sure.
anyone who's watching, could you let them know what else you do?
Sure. Independence Care System is a remarkable support organization for people with physical disabilities. We are actually now able to provide service in New York City, all 5 boroughs, Westchester, Orange County. And what we do is provide coordination of care. And as you said, our 3 pillars are health. So being sure that you have access to primary care, screening services, which aren't always available for people with physical disabilities, mobility, as we talked about with the Honor Roll program, and then community, having a place to come and be with other people with the lived experience so you don't feel like you're going this alone. So ICS provides that community that gives you the support.
Now, I think this is just, a really amazing organization. And I was really happy to hear about this initiative because I think so many able-bodied people don't often think about, some of these things. So I think this is just like an amazing initiative. And I'm so glad that you were here to talk to us about it.
Thank you. We appreciate your interest. And really, anybody just give us a call. We're happy to direct your inquiry.
To learn more about Honor Roll, please email them at honorroll@icsny.org or call them at 646-653-6266. And you can follow ICSNY on social media at ICSNY. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open right after this.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa, los hombres no lloran.
You alright?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
I've been running code as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
It's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good they can't ignore you.
My magic is
Analytics and empathy. That's how I'm getting clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I am more than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. Stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
Welcome back. In the United States, the chronic illness diabetes affects millions, but unfortunately, due to the high cost of insulin, many patients cannot afford the life-saving medication they need to survive. The documentary Pay or Die sheds light on the struggles of families as they try to manage the high cost of life-saving medications. Let's take a look at the trailer.
I remember every single day, birthdays, vacations. I have a hard time remembering the day of the funeral.
I'm type 1 diabetic. My daughter's type 1 diabetic.
You need to do a shot.
I can't do it.
I lost my job, and then we lost our home.
The person who has type 1 diabetes will not survive without taking insulin.
Oh my God.
In the States, medicine is handled like a business. In Canada, it's healthcare.
And I could come to Canada and save $1,555.10.
In '96, insulin was $21. 2019 goes to almost $300, over a 1,000% price increase.
And that's killing people. My son died because he struggled to afford the one medicine created to save his life. We made a pact that no other family will go through the pain that we're going through.
This has to stop.
When you're fighting Big Pharma, there are no guarantees.
I will not rest until I have seen justice for the lives that pharma and our government has taken.
Joshua! Jesse! Justice for Alex!
My biggest worry is staying alive.
What do we want? When do we want it? Enough is enough. We got to change the system.
director and producer of the film, Rachel Dyer, now joins me to discuss Pay or Die. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Kibin.
Now, can you talk about, the documentary Pay or Die?
Sure. Well, as you just saw watching the trailer, it really reads as America's true horror story. Unfortunately, there are just so many type 1 diabetics specifically out there who don't have access to their life-saving medication, insulin. Unfortunately, it's just too expensive for them to be able to afford. Throughout the documentary, we showcase kind of 3 key stories and looking at it from different perspectives. We look at the emotional toll, the physical toll, and the financial toll of what this disease does for so many people. We follow a mother and her husband who lost their son Alec due to rationing insulin, which unfortunately has become a household term to ration one's insulin. Then we also follow a mother and daughter who are both type 1 diabetics, and unfortunately they became homeless because they had to choose their rent or their life-saving medication. And then we also follow a young woman named Cara who was diagnosed at the height of COVID, and we show her just how challenging the illness is to kind of navigate through, like what everyone else was dealing with at the time during COVID as well.
Now, what inspired you to actually explore this and create this documentary?
Sure. So our other director, Scott Ruderman, he is a type 1 diabetic. So he knew firsthand what it was like to live with the condition, but not specifically to not be able to afford it due to insulin rationing. But over time, as a documentary maker, he had heard that there are so many people with type 1 diabetes out there that are forced to ration. And when I first came here, I was a journalist and I was covering a lot of medical refugee stories of Americans traveling to either Mexico or Canada to access their life-saving medication. So when we met and came together and I found out that Scott was a type 1 diabetic, I said, why don't you come with me to Canada? And you can see for yourself that there are so many people that are traveling across the border to access their life-saving medication. So he came with me and we went into quite a few pharmacies, and it was heartbreaking to watch because he broke down and just cried because he couldn't believe that for the first time he was in a country that accepted him for who he was, and his home country didn't, because there he just simply couldn't afford it. So to put it in perspective, a vial of insulin that would last him about 10 days to a week in Canada at the time, it cost between 19 and 21 Canadian dollars. Here it's over $300 out of pocket. So it's an exorbitant cost that Americans are having to face every day if they don't have insurance.
And, I'm curious to know what that, experience was like for you. And, how was it working with Scott on this film, especially since it is so close to home for him?
Yeah, I think that, the film, it did carry a huge emotional toll for us, obviously, working so closely with the subjects. We worked on the film for, just over 4 years, but intimately, very intimately. It was primarily just the 2 of us in the field for the majority of the time. But we did that to ensure that we could build really strong relationships with our subject and build trust. And because Scott did have type 1 diabetes, and I was a carer and a partner of his, they were able to relate to us very, very quickly because we shared the same, stories as them. We understood what they were going through, but it did make it quite a challenge because there were times when, Cara was first learning and she might not be able to administer her, medication properly. But, we wanted to jump in and help, but we didn't because we knew that we needed to get this seen so everyone could really see how difficult and, complicated and expensive that this illness can be for so many.
Now, you talked about some of the families. What was the process of getting families to share this very vulnerable side of them? I know sometimes people, it is a very private thing, and they're this very heavily emotional experience that they're going through. So, what was the experience or the challenge of getting people to share this with an audience?
I think, again, it came back to us spending so much time with the subjects and really building trust and building strong relationships and friendships now outside of the film. But also, too, I think that they they knew that, especially for Nicole and James, who lost their son Alec, they didn't want anyone to go through what the pain and struggle that they've been through. So they really wanted to make sure that this issue was the forefront for so many people, and a lot of people who didn't know about it would be able to understand that this is happening all too often in America. The other unfortunate thing is that we actually had so many people reach out to us who wanted to share their story. This is unfortunately all too common. So many people who are rationing their insulin, so many people who can't afford it. So we had a number of people willing to come forward and want to share what they're all going through.
And can you talk about rationing insulin a little bit? I've heard the term a few times now, and I think maybe for someone who's not familiar, they may not know what that is. So can you just expand on that?
Of course. So insulin rationing is a term that is used amongst type 1 diabetics and diabetics, whereas they try to stretch out their medication to last as long as possible. So if you're a type 1 diabetic, it is very different to type 2. Type 1, you are insulin dependent. You have to take your insulin multiple times a day in order to survive. You won't survive without taking that insulin, at a max period of about 3 days. So what happens is when a lot of people can't afford it, they try to take the most little amount as possible until then they can find, their next insulin pen or get their paycheck, which was what happened in Alec's case. It was just 3 days until his next paycheck would come in. So he was trying to stretch out his medicine to be able to survive for those 3 days. But unfortunately, didn't. And this is the common problem of what is happening, especially with so many 26-year-olds, because that's when they come off their parents' health insurance. So they're trying to make it on their own and to be able to survive without being on their parents' health insurance anymore, but just aren't able to. So we see a lot of 26-year-olds who are dying because they're trying to insulin ration.
Now, this leads into my next question about the title, which is very straightforward, Pay or Die. And I think it really highlights and sets the tone of the documentary. Can you talk about the title just in general and how it reflects on the current state of health in America and pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, of course. So, yes, it is a very strong and memorable title, but one we wanted to choose for the film because it says exactly what is happening. People in America, for a lot of life-saving medications, not just access to insulin, you either have to pay or the worst result that can happen is you die. And there are so many Americans dying. And we wanted to use insulin as kind of the tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the American healthcare system for a lot of life-saving medications. But it's not just insulin and people with diabetes who are being affected. It's also people on EpiPens, asthma puffers, cancer medications, where the prices are just so exorbitant that a lot of people can't afford it. So they're having to make that really difficult choice. In Sandra and Emma's case, it was choose a roof over their head. Unfortunately, in Alec's case, he passed away.
Now, can you talk, or you described Pay or Die as a call to action. Can you just expand on, what you meant by that?
Of course. So I think the main thing that we want to do with this documentary is educate, Americans to understand that this is happening today. This is happening in first world America, and it shouldn't be a privilege to have to be able to buy your life-saving medication in this country. It should be a human right. It is a very complex system that is systematically set up to be very complicated with the pharmaceutical companies, with PBMs, with the insurance companies. But unfortunately, the people that are suffering are the patients. Big Pharma did come out earlier this year and reduce their prices. But what we want everyone to know is that was a voluntary action. So it means that they can raise those prices to whatever they want, whenever they want again. So what we need everyone to do is to write to their legislator, to write to their representatives and try and get a federal bill passed that will cap the price of insulin so that we won't be in this toing and froing with the big pharmaceutical companies anymore and held at ransom.
And I also want to highlight earlier in the interview, you mentioned that there are different layers that the film explores. Can you just highlight, some of those themes and how it kind of shines a light on life with illness in America?
Yeah, of course. So we wanted to ensure that there was three kind of main topics that we were covering, both the physical aspect of living with a life-threatening condition, a emotional toll, and the emotional toll that has living with type 1 diabetes is 24/7. You do not have a choice of whether you want to administer that medication day in or day out. You have to do it. So it becomes very exhausting, very tiring, very complicated. So we wanted to really kind of show that through the film too, emotionally, and what other couples or siblings or families have to go through in addition to the individual with the condition. Then we wanted to show the final piece of the puzzle, which in America, it's financial. So even though so many people are going through the physical and emotional, here it's a financial toll and a financial burden. So many people are worrying, how am I going to afford that medicine to be able to survive tomorrow? So much so that a lot of people that have, fall in what we call this gap, this financial gap. So some people have made too much money to be able to go on subsidies like Medicaid, but then not enough to be able to afford their medication. So there's a huge gap of people that are kind of stuck in this hole of, not knowing where their next, insulin is going to come from because they can't afford to pay for it out of pocket.
Well, I appreciate you, coming here and having this conversation. I also want to take a time to talk about what you brought in today, because I think there's a really interesting story behind this. As somebody who, has to live closely and know someone that, is living with diabetes, can you just share a little bit about what you brought in?
So this tea tin was made in honor of, by Hani and Sons in honor of Banting and Best. So Banting and Best were the inventors of insulin, and they were Canadian, and they sold the patent for insulin for $1, for $1 Canadian, to ensure that no one would make a profit for it. So that's just a stark reminder of, how far we've come. And unfortunately in America, that now prices of insulin, had gone well above $300. But the original ideology of these inventors was that it was going to be medication for all, and that, there wasn't profit to be made. And then this is just a tote bag that is highlighting the film, which our film, Pay or Die, is going to be coming out on World Diabetes Day, 14th of November on Paramount Plus. So we really encourage everyone to watch the documentary. Even if they don't know anything about type 1 diabetes, everyone can relate to the American healthcare system and the struggles with it, and also to live through the emotional, journey of the characters that we're following in the story.
Well, I want to thank you so much for, joining us and sharing this story and sharing a little part of you that, that you've learned about yourself and that you have to, live through as well, making the film. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much, Kibin.
If you would like to learn more about this film, please go to their website at www.payorddiefilm.com. And please don't forget to follow them on social media at Pay or Die Film. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Dyer and Jaime on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.